welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so sorry. We are apologetic right out the gate because we are starting, I think, almost 10 minutes late. We are sorry, but we were having some last minute technical difficulties. And so we were trying to figure that out. But we are here now. And so we are happy for you to be with us. Please let us know where you are watching from. We'd like to know. Um, we would like to know where you're watching from. So please let us know. And for some reason, I can't see the chat, but maybe Dr. Whyte can, so he'll be able to see and welcome our guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to be. Are you able to? Can you see the
I can
chat?
see the I can see the chat. Jamaica, we've got Greenville. Um, we got Spoke. Hi, Crystal. Uh, good evening from Greensboro. Yeah. So my is that a no? We got young.
You know what, Doctor? Um, yeah, you're cutting in and out, and that's really unfortunate because I can't see the chat and you can see the chat. Um, Yes. So
Yeah.
you're cutting in and out. That's something we were working on. I know this has happened before, those of you who watch us. And we've actually, Dr. Whyte got a new mic that was supposed to fix the problem, and it seems to not be fixing the problem, which we need to figure out why this is happening. Dr. Whyte, can you say a few words so I can see where you're at and see if it's getting better or if
No
it's getting worse?
problem. We have PJ from Pump. How's it sound?
Yeah, it's getting. All I heard was Pete from. I don't know where Pete's from. Welcome, Pete, and welcome all of our other guests that are watching, our viewers. I know this is like. I mean, I guess we can. And yes, we do pray over our program. We pray over the equipment. We pray over the everything, and so we pray that everything will be okay. So all things work together for good. God has a reason behind this, but I'm gonna have you go out and come back in and see if that doesn't get better. I know we
Absolutely.
did that several times at the last time we were here 2 weeks ago, but we're gonna try it again. Yeah, please stay with us because we are talking about marriage and 5 steps to bringing your marriage back from the brink. So your marriage is on the brink. You're, close to it not existing anymore. And um, so this is what we're going to be talking about. And this is 5 steps to bring your marriage back from the brink by Michelle Weiner Davis. And so we did go through these last time, but because there were so much technical difficulties, we had a request to um, to repeat this information because it's so very important. And I said, okay, sure. Like, I don't think you can hear this enough, and we'll be adding new things into it. So we're going to be taking your questions and your comments as well. So we're gonna start that here as soon as we get Dr. Whyte back. Yeah, this is quite a yeah. When we're going live, it's quite the event. And Amber, our producer, if you could help by putting things up on the screen for me because I can't see the chat. Dr. Whyte could see the chat. I can't see the chat, so I don't know people's questions and things like that when they come up. But we are going to begin because we don't want to, we're not trying to take up all your time. And this is really important information. It's basic info. I don't want to say basic because it's not basic. It will sound basic-ish. But when you're in a relationship and in a marriage, it really isn't basic because it takes all of the maturity in you and power through God to be able to execute these things in your marriage. Because when your marriage is going, we're going to make south seem like that's the bad way. So when your marriage is going south or it's on the brink, like you're not wanting to do any of these things. You just want to be angry, mad, hurt, and be and just have resentment, right? So you when this is happening, you're not going to want to do any of these 5 steps that we're talking about, and they may sound basic, but when you're in a marriage that's going again south, on the brink, on the way to divorce, it's not easy to do these things, but these things are also to help prevent your marriage from going there. And so the very first thing by that Michelle Weiner Davis, and you guys can look her up to learn more of her marriage stuff. She has really good stuff. Is number one, real giving, real giving. And you're saying, like, okay, what does that really mean? So, real giving is you giving to your spouse things that your spouse wants, not necessarily things and it's not, it doesn't have anything to do with you. You may like totally not want it and you don't uh it's just not what you're wanting, but it's something that your spouse wants, and your spouse has to feel that it's very sincere, right? You don't give your spouse something grudgingly, but you're doing it like from a sincere place in your heart, so your spouse feels like, wow, I really feel the love that you have for me, because I know that you don't even necessarily like this, but you're doing this just for me. And that goes vice versa. So your spouse should be doing that for you as well. And that's a situation where it's a complementary situation where you're doing for your spouse what they want from you, and they're doing for you for what you want them to do for you, or giving them something, whatever it may be. And that is the very first step. Hi, Dr. Whyte, you're back.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yes, and we can hear you without, so we're just going to pray, Lord, keep his mic that way. So I just
Thank
did an
you.
overview, and you can fill in the real giving part. And while you're giving the real giving part, I'm going to see if I can fix my computer so I can see the chats. I want to see the comments and possible questions that are popping
Sure.
up. So we're just on step one.
Okay, yeah. So again, and of course, Michelle Weiner Davis is one of my favorite marriage and family therapy influencers. And so I'll just give you a brief snapshot on her. So if I'm not mistaken, she got as far as definitely at least her bachelor's in psychology, but also may have gotten to her master's, but she definitely got her MFT, if I'm not mistaken. And her niche is she is passionate about working with couples who one partner already has their foot out of the door. So she works with couples who are struggling with things like infidelity and how to heal from that. And her preferred approach is solution focused therapy. Solution focused therapy. So put a 1 in the chat if you're hearing me nice and clear. I greatly appreciate that. And so she talks about these 5 things that you can do in the event that you want to kind of resurge your relationship. And so the first, of course, is this real giving. With real giving, Sister Tante kind of mentioned. Thank you guys so much for the feedback. So glad you can finally hear me. Yeah, but so with real giving, you're not giving what you want. Okay. A lot of times we give based on what we want. But with real giving, you're giving based on what that partner actually wants. So one of the clues you're going to get that you're doing real giving is the feedback from the partner. Okay, you're going to notice them gush. You're going to notice that they really value it. Um, I'll give you an illustration of the time that I did some real giving for my wife. And one of the things about real giving is you don't want to do it. I believe it was way back when I was an attending at Loma Linda, and I remember things were really, really busy. I was low on energy, high on fatigue, and I remember her really, really good friend coming up to me and she said, I have a bright idea. And I'm like, here we go. And her friend said, you should throw Florence a surprise party. And I'm just thinking back now to when she suggested that. And I was thinking, whether she would want it or not, I am so exhausted. And the prospect of putting together all the details, and of course, details tend to not be my strength, but the prospect of putting together all the details and making this happen, I was like, oh my goodness. And so I say, all right. So initially I'm like, no way, this is crazy. You've got to be Looney Tunes to even suggest something like that. But fortunately I didn't talk to my wife or anything. But then I thought about it more. The emphasis here is I didn't want to do it. Way too exhausted. But then I thought about it more and more, and somehow I was able to get out of my head and get to, well, what would your wife think of this? How would she value this? And little by little, the prospect of doing this, I started to get more and more excited. And then I actually did it. Sis, I'm telling them the story of when I threw.
I heard you, the surprise birthday party. And I know all about the surprise birthday party. I could hear you. I just had myself on mute so that I could try to fix my thing so I could see the chat, and I still can't see the chat. So that's okay. So I'm dependent upon you and Amra to
Yeah,
put it up
I
there
get
so I
right,
know when there's questions.
right now. There's a row of ones in the chat that they can hear me well. So
Okay, and I'm so happy. Actually, I do see the chat. Like Joanne
yeah,
Stevens commented. All right, so maybe moving
yeah,
forward I can. Perfect.
yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
yeah, so I didn't want to do it, but that's the key in this. I didn't want to do it. It's not something I wanted. I became
Right.
clear that this is something she wanted.
Right.
And I went through all the trouble. And of course, her best friend, she played one of her best friends played a huge role in distracting her, keeping her out.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most beautiful experiences. And
Aw.
she absolutely, like the smile on her face, like just the joy on her face. I mean,
That's
she was really gushing. It
aw.
was something she wanted.
Yes.
And a lot of times, that thing that they want, it's going to put you out emotionally. It might put you out financially. It might put you out from an energy standpoint, but it's what they want.
Right.
That is the essence of real giving. What are your thoughts, sis?
What's funny is I'm just thinking that since we're talking about surprise parties and I just threw one for Ivor, it's interesting because I don't know if he necessarily wanted it, but when I did it and he was there and all of his friends and family from throughout his life were there, he cried, and you saw that he cried,
Absolutely.
and so he was happy. But I can't say that he's just like deep down he was like, throw me a surprise party, because he actually, what people don't know is he's an introvert. And so he seems like he's not, because when he's preaching and does all that, it doesn't seem like it, but he is. So I don't think he would say, throw me a surprise party, but he enjoyed it, and he thoroughly enjoyed it. But I love your illustration that you used. It really touched your wife, because that's what she
Well,
wanted. That's a good best
well,
friend too.
well, the key was, I'm sure you didn't do it because you wanted it. You did it because you were convinced on some level he would want this.
Right. And I just wanted to celebrate his life, like who he is, like, so yeah.
It was
I feel like
beautiful. It
he
was
feel like he deserved it.
it
But
was
no, you're right.
beautiful.
Marriage, but going back to real giving, I mean, that's really what that first step is really what makes marriage work. I mean, if you can, like, think about it, if you can master that first step, you're really probably not going to be deep in the weeds on those other steps, right?
Well, because it's not just one time that you're going to give.
Oh yeah, no.
In order to give, in order to really give, you then have to attune. So
Mhm.
you gotta shut yourself out long enough to actually see, what is this person about? Who
Right.
are they? What do they like? What do they hate? Like, you really
Mhm.
would have to attune to that. And by the time you do that well, the next step is just to actually give them, is just to act on that information. And
Right.
that's why real giving is so central, so core, so important. Because if once you commit yourself to really give, you're then going to start attuning to that person. I saw
Mhm.
the look on Pastor's face. He was blown away.
He
He
was
was
blown.
blown away. He
Yeah.
was emotional.
Yeah.
It's like you gave him something he didn't even know he wanted.
I agree.
He didn't even know he
I
wanted
agree.
that.
I
But
agree.
at the end of the evening, he wanted that.
Yeah, he was
Um,
having fun. He
he
couldn't
had a
stop.
ball.
He
He had a
couldn't
ball.
stop.
So,
Yeah.
but she did that from attunement. You were attuned. You were
Right.
attuned. And so
Yeah.
attunement is a prerequisite for real giving. So anyway,
Mhm.
so that's a big one. We could spend the whole evening
Right.
on real giving, but we're
On
not going to
forgiving.
do that.
Mhm.
But a lot of times a big problem is we don't really give.
Yes,
We don't
and we
really
do.
give.
Right, and you don't, and we don't really want to. I mean, you don't feel, I shouldn't say we don't really want to. You don't really feel like really giving because there's so much either resentment there, or you know, resentment really. You're low key. There's some resentment, so you're
Ticked
always
off.
kind of, yeah, I was gonna say you're always low key kind of mad at them, because you resent
Absolutely.
something they've done to you throughout this marriage. And so you're just like, oh, I don't have to do that for him. I don't have to do that for her. Um,
And here's the
yeah,
key. Here's the key. You'll always have a reason why you should be upset with your partner.
right.
You'll always have a
Because
reason.
they're
There's
human.
a there's always something you could remember. And so if you're going to be in that frame of thinking, you
Mhm.
could be in that frame of thinking perpetually.
True.
By the same token, real talk, there's always a reason to also be happy with your partner. Okay? And when we say always, we're not your therapist. We don't know your
Right.
situations. We're not talking about abusive situations. Okay, so please be clear that.
Yes.
But in general, there is some truth to the reality that it comes down to what you choose to focus on. And sometimes there's a time to focus on, things that need to be worked on in the relationship. And sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, we're going to have a good time right now, and we're going to
Right.
focus on the things that build that enjoyment.
Right.
But what Sis is talking about is the fact that focus on the negative stuff can paralyze you from real giving.
Right.
Okay, it can paralyze you because it's hard to give for real, because by definition it's not something you want. Okay, it doesn't even make sense to you. You're
Right.
like, I don't even know why you would value this, but
Right.
that's what they want. That's what they want. What were you going to
And
say, Sis?
well, I was just gonna say, like, you said we could always think about something to be upset with our spouse about, but like, when we talked about a few weeks ago, and we were going through the Gottman series, and we talked about having a culture of appreciation in your marriage, and showing or telling them one thing that you appreciate about them daily, just one, can help you not be in that place where you want to just hold on to the resentment and not want to do real giving. That can help you in your relationship
Remember,
to not always stay mad at them, because you can always have a reason to be mad because they've done something or said something that you don't really like.
totally, totally. Somebody said, is there, well, first of all, one comment was, I guess it's also a matter of showing love and giving in the other person's love language. And the other comment is there a risk of bringing baggage from the past? So let's go back to, I guess it's also a matter of showing love slash giving in the other person's love language.
Hmm.
Um, you know what's interesting about the love languages? I don't know if I've said this before, right? But this is a good place to mention this. So I'm familiar, some relative familiarity with the love languages. And people will often talk about a partner having a love language.
Hmm.
Uh, I just want to say, Sister Tante, you let me know if this is true. Um, in general, would you agree that women value novelty?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that if you come with the same thing every time, doesn't it put that person at risk of boredom?
Um, I don't know if I agree with that all the way. Well, because they can do it. There's such a variety of ways that you can speak that language. Like you don't have to speak their love language in the exact same way every time. So that's where I would say that it doesn't have
You
to be
you differ. So
sort of, yeah.
diversify even that one language. Fair enough.
Right, right.
All
Within that language.
my appeal is just in terms of expand your repertoire, because I per se don't think it's going to per se hurt you. It's
Right,
nice to have to know the sweet spot. It's nice to know the
right.
sweet spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is an art to gift giving, and if you do it
Mm,
poorly, the person is very likely to not enjoy the gift. There's an art.
right,
There is a, how do you conceal it? How do you unveil it? How do you attune to know what that person wants? There's an art to gift giving. There's an
right,
art to touching. There's an
right.
art to touching. You
And
know,
we were talking about these big things that we did for our spouses, or I don't know if you guys were dating still when you did this
we were
question.
married. We were
You
married.
guys were
We were
married.
married at that
Okay.
point. Yeah.
So that we
Uh-huh.
did, but I mean it's in the little things and it doesn't have to be that big. I mean, you know what your spouse likes and what they've communicated that they want, or you know your spouse. And so um true giving, it doesn't have to be this huge big thing, but it could be in the little things that they say that they like, and you can do that, and it will put your marriage in a space um where you guys are not holding on to that resentment, and they really feel the love. And it's not just like giving a gift grudgingly again, but you're giving a gift from a sincere place in your heart.
No, no, well said. Well said. And I see some people appealing for prayer. And fortunately, the wife of our prayer leader is actually on. And so, of course, there must be some way for us to get those over
Well, and I think the prayer
to
team,
Brother
there
Terry
there are prayer leader, there are prayer team. There's prayer
in
people
this.
on the prayer team that are on, and they're actually recording those prayer requests as well.
Nice, nice,
Yes,
nice,
so
nice,
they are.
nice.
So yes,
So
so
definitely
those are
appreciate
being,
that.
yeah, those are being received. I think there was another question I think I wanted to go to before we move on to the second one,
Is
and it
there a
was,
risk of bringing
oh,
baggage
there
from the
it is.
past?
Amber's thinking
Um,
ahead of me.
well said. Nice, nice, Amber. Well, the bottom line is that's what you're trying to avoid. That's what Sister Tante was mentioning. That, like, if you keep holding on to the content, to the resentment, that's what's fueling it.
Right.
Is the remembering the past, especially the negatives from the past, and so that makes it now hard for you to give when you don't feel like it.
Mhm.
So
So
that can paralyze you.
yeah, the way I read that question too was, is there a risk of bringing baggage from the past? So like bringing baggage into this relationship. That's how I'm kind of reading it too. Um, that's what I'm thinking. Unless they're just saying bringing bringing up things that happened in the past in their marriage back up. I don't know.
That
Either,
that's how I was reading it. Like, is there a
okay.
risk of bringing baggage from the past? And I
Okay.
guess I'm just saying the essence of baggage. When you talk about
Right.
baggage, is
Whether it's
it's
from
being
another
brought
relation.
along.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
it's it's
Either
brought
way.
along and it doesn't fit. It doesn't
Right.
fit. And
Right.
so we're in the context of what we're saying those resentful thoughts can be fueled by baggage. Like, dude, it's a fight. It happened in the past, but
Hmm.
there probably is some commitment to try to move forward. And
Right.
so with it still being to the forefront when it's supposed to be in the past, that can bring resentment on both sides, both the
Hmm.
person who's feeling the resentment and the person who's being subjected to the resentment. They're like, well, what's the point? What's the
Right.
point?
Right.
um you said you were going to forgive me. Here you are bringing it up. What's the point?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
So you can see why all roads lead to get yourself the professional help that you need
Yes.
when these issues come up, because these are not little issues. These are
They're
big
not.
issues. What were
If
you going
you're
to say?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, if you're finding that you can't work through the baggage of the past with that has happened in your marriage and you keep bringing it up, definitely seek a a marriage and family a counselor, mental health counselor to help you be able to process that as a couple, because obviously trying to do it on your own is not quite working, and it is risky and dangerous to keep bringing things up from the past, because things need to be able to have a lifespan and then die
Move on.
and be buried.
Died, exactly. Now, number two. So this is a nice dovetail for number two. And number two is it takes one to tango. So this again is brilliant.
Yeah.
Did you want to tackle it first?
Well, I
Or
just
no?
wanted to say it is brilliant um, that she came up with this, because it's true. Like, we think, oh no, I can't have that kind of impact on my spouse. But like what Michelle brings up is that um, if we can negatively impact our spouse by ourselves, we can positively impact our spouse by ourselves. And so your uh, proper, I should say, behavior, your good behavior, your kind behavior, your, you know, giving, real giving. And even if your spouse is not doing that back, your real giving can have an impact on your spouse. So you can tango
Yeah.
by yourself.
Yeah, because I mean the common statement is it takes two to tango,
Right.
and so a lot of times, and this connects to the statement that well, both of you have a role, and it takes two of you, and what this is saying is no, let's obliterate that, and
Mhm.
further undergirding that premise is this idea that you can't change people slash you can't control people, and while I'm not going to necessarily try to support that idea that you can change people or you can control people, let's say maybe you can't, but I'll tell you one thing: you can influence people and
Mhm.
you can impact people. You can
Mhm.
influence people, you can impact people, and that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
Right.
And I think sometimes we minimize the power of our ability to influence and impact someone. And
Mhm.
this goes directly back to number one,
Mhm.
where if we would give what the person wants,
Right.
that would create a dynamic to influence them. Okay.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
can take one to tango. In
Mhm.
fact, Michelle, this is Michelle Weiner Davis that we're talking about. She goes so far as she's like, look, if even if your spouse doesn't want to come to the therapy session with me, you come,
Right.
because I can empower you and equip you with abilities to impact even the toxicity in your relationship.
Right.
So this idea of it can take one to tango. Again,
Mhm.
this is not so you overwhelm yourself, but this is to help you understand that sometimes you have more influence than you think you have. And
Mhm.
the means available to you to impact your relationship profoundly, you should make sure you're making use of.
Right.
So it was a very, very, again, another profound point, and you can see why
Mhm.
I like her so much.
Yeah.
She does a solution focused, approach,
I,
and it's super
yeah.
helpful. What were you gonna say,
No, I love
Sister
solution
Tante?
focused. I love solution focused. And it's interesting. You actually introduced me to her, because I didn't know her work until we decided, oh, let's do this on one of the programs. And so, yeah, and I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I hadn't heard of her before. So I'm definitely going to be taking some of these things and putting it into
Well,
in the way that she packaged it. I like the
sure.
way that she packaged it.
I'm glad you like her.
I
And
do.
and Sister Tante, I mean, there are just so many of them,
Mm,
so it's not strange that maybe you might not have heard of her.
right.
But she's definitely a giant. She's
Yeah.
definitely a giant. And I had
She
the
is.
privilege of going to one of her workshops, and
Mhm.
it was really delightful,
Oh,
really
yeah.
delightful. So
That's
tell Oakwood to send you
yeah.
to one of those.
I'm gonna tell myself to send myself.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes.
Look, looks like
Um,
we got a question, a comment. Sometimes a spouse brings up the past and hopes that the past is not repeated. Sometimes the spouse brings up the past in the hopes that the past is not repeated. I have
Yeah,
an interesting, go
I
for it.
I found that interesting, and I just thought I was like, man, if that premise was brought into like the therapy room as, with couples, I would probably really push back on that because that's not just the premise of that. It's like if something if you have to bring something up so that the spouse doesn't do it again, that's not really the motivation that you want from the spouse. I mean, it needs to be within their heart. It needs to come from within, and not just because you're telling them that. If that's because that's not real change, and that doesn't give you guarantee that it's never going to happen again. And so it's just not a really, I think, a healthy way to go about, trying to get your spouse not to do something within the marriage.
Sister Atante, tell me what you think of this. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. So, from time to time, I have to work with couples who are dealing with infidelity.
Mm,
And in working with the partner who has offended, I will
mm-hmm,
share with them, if you remember, your partner can forget. If
mm,
you remember, your partner can forget. But
mm,
if you forget, it will cause your partner to remember. And what
mm.
I'm saying by that is, when a partner remembers that they've offended the other partner, what'll
They
happen is
Yes.
the partner that has been offended is going to prescribe, hey, it would help me if you do X, Y, or Z.
Mhm.
If the offending partner remembers to do X, Y, or Z, it sets up a dynamic for the offended partner to
Mm,
forget.
mm,
But when they forget to do X, Y, or Z, what it does is it can re-trigger and it can re-traumatize that person. And guess what? That will lead them to do. They're going to remember. That's
mhm,
why I say, if the offending party can remember, then the other party can forget.
mhm.
But if they forget, it will cause the other partner to remember. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's, great advice, and that just, makes perfect sense. Um yeah, I yeah, it's yeah, I mean, you said it all. I think I couldn't add any more to it. So I think it's perfect. Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad we agreed on that. We didn't agree on the other part, but we could agree on that.
We agree on that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm like,
Okay.
well, yeah. When you asked me as a woman, what did I think about that? So,
No, and I wanted an honest response,
yeah,
and we can't agree on everything. That's why
we can.
your name is Atante and mine is Ricardo.
Right, right.
Um, okay,
So the third
so
step, I think we're going to the
yes.
third step.
Yes, we are. Go for it.
The third step, do more of what works. Do
Do
more of
more.
what works. And like, this is why I said this is going to sound basic, but it's not basic when you're actually in the marriage, in the relationship, and needing to do these things. And so, you see what works for your marriage, what's going well. I think an example that Michelle gave is like, she saw a couple who they went home and they were doing good like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday they weren't doing good. And she's like, "Okay, pause. What were you doing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday that made the relationship work so well?" And I guess they highlighted that. She's like, "Okay, do more of that." So that it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next time. And so highlighting that and doing more of that
Well
is what
said.
she shares.
Well said, Sister Tante. And I think that as we went on to do more of what works, we right simultaneously got the question, how would you know if you're influencing your spouse for the better if they're not verbally communicating that to you? Well, as you and I both know, Sister Tante, communication is like, what is it, like 15% verbal and maybe
Right.
85% body languages and other
Yes.
methods of
I was just
communicating?
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
We're
They
on the
don't
same page.
yeah, you're going to know. It doesn't have to be verbal. If you can the other communication through body language and those things will let you know whether it's affecting them in a positive way or if they're not receiving it at all. You will know, and it doesn't have to
This
be
is where
it
your
doesn't have to be
this is
through
where
words.
your statement this is where your statement, Sister Tante, get a PhD in your spouse is
Yeah.
really helpful. Like,
Mhm.
take the time to learn your spouse. What does it mean when they grimace? What does it mean when they get silent? What are the signs that they're retracting and they're withdrawn? Because people have a language, and I'm not talking about the love languages right now. I'm
Mhm.
talking about the confluence. I'm talking about the dynamics of your particular spouse. What it means when they raise their eyebrow. What it means when they get tense. Like, you want to learn your spouse because they're communicating a ton. When
Yeah.
a person is happy with you, they are communicating that they're happy with you one way or the other. And when they're not happy with you, they're communicating that they're not happy with you. What were you going to say, Sister
I was
Tante?
just gonna say, like, I mean, you guys have been married as long as we've been married, and I just want to see if it's the same. I know it is probably the same for you and for others who have been married for quite a long time. Like, Ivor doesn't have to say words.
A
Like,
thing.
like, I know,
A
like,
thing.
I know every his face, the way he even
The
clears his
thing.
throat sometimes. I know
Yeah.
when he's about
The
to
thing.
tell me something that's not the best news, he clears his throat a certain kind of way. He's
That's hysterical.
communicating to me that this is not about to be the best news that I'm about to give you or whatever. Like
That
it.
that is hysterical because the fight becomes, why are you not verbalizing? But
Yeah.
it is clear you're upset. Okay, it is clear. So we're not even fighting about the fight. We're fighting about, okay, you're not saying anything. Your body language is screaming there's something wrong.
Right.
So when are we going to get to discussing it? So the idea just being, without question, people are communicating whether what you're doing is helping or not. And if perchance you're going to tell me that after 10 or 20 years you're oblivious to
Right.
that person's language, then that would scream you need professional help to help you learn how to decipher how your spouse is communicating. Like, you got to put some real effort into what is the method by which this person
Hmm.
communicates displeasure and pleasure. Because yeah, it's fair to recognize that you don't know, but that is definitely an important thing to figure out.
Right. Yes. Yes.
um
There's a good question here that's up. Before I think we move on to the
yeah,
fourth.
go ahead, go ahead.
Um, says good night, which that means it's a brother or sister, or a sister, I should say, in the Caribbean culture, because they say good night like, as good evening here is what we say. But my husband went through a lot from his first marriage over 30 years ago. And he still brings it up. And it's like he's still living in the past. How can I help him with that? Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of times when people repeat something to you, sometimes it's a signal that they have not been heard the way they want to be heard.
Mm,
And especially if your posture is one of, they're bringing it up again, it is highly likely you're not going to hear it and convey the emotion that person wants. And let me also balance that statement with the reality that you could potentially listen perfectly. You could potentially listen perfectly and do everything right, but there are some things a person wants you to hear over and over and over again.
mhm.
All I'm getting at right now is, the better the job you do, the more you are rewarded with reduced intensity and frequency. It
Mhm.
won't go away necessarily completely, but if you listen to a person really well, I don't know if you've ever had the experience to really be present for a person, listen for them. You saw them cry. A lot of times you'll notice they'll stop and they'll be like, thank you for listening to me. That's
Mhm.
not to say it's going to be the end, but
Mhm.
they'll give you that feedback, and you'll notice and they might even say, okay, I can go do something else now, or blah
Mm.
blah 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 blah, or even, hey, let me hear from you now. Okay. I'm
Right.
not saying this spouse is going to do any of that stuff, Janice, because, and that's why we constantly say, I'm not your therapist. I don't know
Right.
exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
But the reality is, one of the ways good listening is rewarded is the person at times will communicate, I really feel like you heard me. I
Right.
really feel like you heard me. And it can often lead to them speaking about it less frequently or less intensely, but it's less. It's not eliminating it. Especially if you give them the good experience, then that makes them want to tell more.
Mm-hmm.
But if perchance they're not satisfied with how you listened, they may be thinking of another approach to see if they can get you into that experience and get you to scratch that itch that they're yearning for.
Mm-hmm.
Please adopt the attitude of you can tell me 1,000 times. You
Mm.
can tell me if I am here for you
Mm.
because I want to be here from you. Heaven forbid you find somebody else to tell other than a therapist for or what have you. No, I want to be the
Be that
person in
person.
whom your secrets die
And maybe
or
that
live.
could be an example of real giving, like what you're giving is just a listening
Oh,
ear,
that's
even though
brilliant.
you don't want to hear it because you've stayed in here.
Straight
It's been
gold.
30 years. I mean, I get that, but
Straight gold.
once they realize like, wow, I know she doesn't necessarily like me talking about this, or but she's listening from an empathetic stance and is
That
really
was gold.
listening.
That was a mic drop. Take that mic and just drop it. Take that mic and drop it. That was gold.
Mhm.
Bible says that. Oh yeah, I mean let's just unpack that just a little bit more because that is I there's nothing really to add to that. That was
Mhm.
so perfect. You're giving what you don't feel like giving. You're tired of hearing about it, but nothing in your body communicates that. Your
Mhm.
eyes and everything in your being are communicating. You come tell me. Put your head right here. You be there for that person. And
Mhm.
I promise you, I believe you'll enjoy the experience more as
Mhm.
that person communicates to you, man, I really feel like you've heard me. And I really appreciate that. Beautiful. Let's go to the question. Bible says that wives need to respect husbands, but what to do when men is wrong? Should woman respect her husband regardless anything, even he makes decisions that are not good for the marriage? Um, that's a great question. Bible says that wives need to respect their husbands. So I would say that the Bible challenges men and women to respect each other
Right.
because you want to remember that it said Christ died for his bride. That's respect. That's
That's
love.
ultimate
That's
love.
that's that's submission.
He sacrificed. He sacrificed his place in heaven and left heaven for his
He
wife.
died.
Yes, he died.
Like and we
So it's
we
easy to
gloss.
respect a husband and love a husband that
That's
would
doing all that.
yeah, that's yeah.
Well, we always gloss over that. We gloss over the fact that he left heaven.
No,
He
men gloss
left
over that
heaven.
part.
He left heaven. All right, fine. Guilty. Guilty
Yeah.
as charged.
It's like,
He
hello.
left heaven.
Yeah.
And the ultimate thing he really sacrificed was what? His relationship with his father. Okay? Like that bond and oneness he sacrificed forever. So the bottom line is what I'm getting at is both men, the Bible and the story of the gospel challenges both men and women to submit. And to submit to what, by the way? Because it's not just submitting to each other. What men and women are really and truly supposed to submit to is a purpose.
Right.
I hope you heard that. Men
Mhm.
and women are supposed to submit to a purpose. Your family, your home, your collaboration is
Mhm.
to a firm, and that firm should have a purpose so noble, a purpose so beautiful, a purpose so everlasting that both of you would count it a joy to submit to. Okay?
Mhm.
All
Mhm.
right? Now, so now, if a person is doing something idiotic, you can see why now we got to renegotiate
Right.
because this does not align with our purpose. This
Right.
does not align with our purpose. And so now we have to figure out where the misalignment is taking place.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. But that's what solves it in my mind.
Mhm.
My wife and I, we are working on a purpose. I submit to that purpose, she submits to that purpose, and we support each other in that purpose,
Mhm.
so that we don't have to battle the, well, you're submitting to me. Now you're submitting to a vision.
Mhm.
And if you don't like the vision, then we need to make it a vision that you like, and we need to sincerely work towards that.
Right.
So should women respect their husband regardless of anything? So I don't believe that that is the goal. Is mindless going along. I don't know that Scripture calls you to mindlessly just go along. I think the man, the woman, God, you guys agree on a purpose, and everybody aligns with that purpose. What are your thoughts,
Well,
Sister Tante?
I'm just thinking like, when you hear, do I need to respect my husband even when they're doing something that throws things out of alignment within our marriage? You don't have to agree with whatever it is that they're doing. The thing I think what happens is we think like, okay, I don't agree with it. That gives me the license to um, not have the fruit of the spirit, or not say things, when I say fruit of the spirit, that are in the Bible, for those of you who may be watching who doesn't know what that is. Just have, kindness towards them, and still be respectful in that sense. Like, you can disagree and still be kind to your spouse.
Right, right. So now again, this is why, like, we what we say really has to be taken in some kind of context, because
Hmm.
if your spouse is saying that, hey, he's going to be adulterous, right? um Obviously the Bible is not asking you to agree, to that, so these are the extremes. And then the other piece to it, though, that Sister Tante is talking about is, we may have disagreements, but we at times we're still called to be respectful of each other and remember that we do have a union. So now that's, well, should you buy tomatoes or should you buy vegetables? One
Right.
can see, or should you buy tomatoes or should you buy cucumbers? Like,
Hmm.
that's a different discussion than what I mentioned, before.
Right.
So that's how vast. So what we can really talk about is large principles. The big principle is, even if we disagree, we can still disagree in love, and we can still honor the commandments. Okay. But there's a limit to our ability to respond to this question because we don't know where the disagreement is. There are some
Hmm.
disagreements that require a bit more energy, if you will, than other disagreements. What
Hmm.
isn't that
Hmm.
isn't that right?
Oh, yes. Oh, for sure. For sure. You know what? For the sake of time, because we have about 10 more minutes left and we want to move on. I don't think there are another. Okay. I think we got through the questions for that
All
section.
right, right.
Um, Number 4, stop doing what isn't working. Again, this sounds basic, but it's like, we don't, when we're in the midst of a marriage that's when we're in the middle of a marriage and we just get so used to doing things that are not good, we just get used to it, and we don't even take time to be like, why don't I just stop doing this? Why don't we do things, or why don't I personally do some things differently? Because it's only causing the marriage to get worse and worse and worse. And so that's just basic common sense. Like, stop doing what the spouse doesn't like, what your spouse doesn't like, and things shall get better.
So in order to figure out what the things are that are not working, what can set us up to not recognize the dynamic is how busy we are. Will be so busy. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many pressures on us that we at times, don't take the time to study out the dynamics. Again, this is why, getting professional help can be, so helpful, because it kind of forces you to stop
Right.
and take the time to highlight dynamics
Mm-hmm.
and see, okay, well, what are the strategies that we want to employ, to make sure our relationship is on track for, longevity.
Right.
Well, so that's what's so when you take the time to do that, that's when you can see, hey, I notice every time I do this, he does this, and I don't like when he does this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what you have to take the time to do, and then you say, how about I do something different?
Yeah.
And that can play a huge role. And so we had a beautiful example in the question before where the person was saying, hey, um, every time my spouse brings this up over and over and over again. Okay, now let's presume that person was listening perfectly. Okay, well, let's just presume. But maybe in another situation, when the person is tired of hearing it over and over again, they start tapping their feet. Maybe they start listening. Maybe they start making a phone call. Maybe they start texting or playing with their phone because they've heard it so many times.
Right.
Okay, well,
Right.
guess what? And they keep doing that over and over and over again. And so, what does that do? When people don't feel heard, they increase volume or they increase frequency, you
Right.
know, until they get fed up and then maybe they just disengage. And
Yeah.
then all
And
of a
that's
sudden you're like, oh, they're not
whoa,
talking
what
about it
happened?
anymore.
Like, why aren't you talking to me? Yes.
Why are they talking to me?
Yeah.
And that can be problematic because sometimes it might mean they're talking to somebody
No, but
else. Um, and so
that.
so so that's why it can be, hey, how about we do something different? How about we give that person the experience of being heard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We want to really garner the skill of learning how to give that partner the experience of, man, I love how you listen to me. I
Mm-hmm.
love how you listen to me. When you do that, it gives you a real leg up in your relationship. So that's something. So, but do something different. Do if you notice that it's not working, ignoring the person, minimizing the
Mm-hmm.
person, being distracted in the person in the presence of the person, do something different. Do something different.
Yeah. Again, I hope you
And the
guys are
last,
taking notes on each point because again, it sounds very basic, but it's not basic. It is, but it's not because
but
you go ahead.
it's fundamental. What it is these are fundamentals, and
Right.
the winningest coach in UCLA history, maybe in college basketball history, John Wooden. And what did he leverage for that winning? The basics.
Mm-hmm.
Mastery of the basics,
Yes.
because the basics are fundamental. The basics give you a platform, and when you master
Mhm.
them, that's when you really can do amazing things. um
It's probably like
Go
many of
ahead.
you are probably like, man, I'm having an aha moment throughout every time we go through the next step because we get so busy and just doing the same thing over and over again. We get into this cycle in our marriage, like he says that, I say this, I do this, he does that, and it just goes on and on and on. And you never just stop to pause and think, like maybe we should do some of these things differently, and we won't have some of the issues that we are experiencing, and we won't be feeling the way negatively the way that we're feeling. So just taking that pause and to think about some of these things that we're talking about, some things that you can say, okay, I mean, this is something you can start tomorrow and think like, hey, what works when we're doing well? What does that look like? I'm gonna start doing more of that. When we're doing bad, what are we doing? What does that look like? I'm gonna stop doing so much of that or all of that.
Well
Because you want to do
said.
the things that. So we're on our fifth step, and that's doing something new. Doing something new.
and
Go ahead. I'll let you start with
and
that.
where sure from is when you take the time to reflect. Hey, I don't like the response. I don't like that. I don't like how the person is do something new
Right.
to do. Do some
Mm-hmm.
research. Look and introduce something new, because that can be of introducing a new dynamic. Example of a friend who husband would be complaining about whenever he would be angry, and she would feel, no, don't do that, don't say that, no, calm down, no, calm down, and feel like she had to right. And what she says, so this one time where he came home, my boss is such of a pain in the neck. Spouse said,
You know what,
your boss is
Doctor?
what?
You're
But
starting to cut up. You're starting to chop up, and you hadn't been doing that the entire well since we got everything fixed. And your story sounds so good because you're doing an example about trying something new. I don't know the story that you're your friend, but I'm just trying to see if maybe I don't know. It's
should
just
I
weird how
leave
that
and come
just
back?
happened.
Testing
Um,
1, 2, 3.
okay, right now it's good. Maybe try to continue.
Yeah. So the bottom line was um, the 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 woman manage the man's emotion and put a one in the chat if I'm clear in the chat if I'm choppy.
You're
The woman.
choppy. But why don't you go out and
Oh
come
man,
back in? Because I
I'll
really
come
want you
back
to
in.
share your to share your
Yeah,
story.
got how I left
And while he,
though.
yeah, you don't know how to leave. You
I,
just
I'm
leave. You just
I'm gonna just
okay, okay. While he's doing that, I want to just kind of do an overview again of like what we've learned. Not just, I mean, we covered this 2 weeks ago. I think this praise God for this program tonight because I think we went even it's more clear. I mean, basically because we didn't have as many mic problems until right now again. But you got the bulk of it. So again, just going back and just reviewing this that the real giving is the number one thing, and I had said it at the beginning of the program that I feel like if you really get into this real giving, that everything else is going to easily fall into place. Because if you're doing real giving, then you're doing it takes one to tango, right? Because even if your spouse is not doing the real giving back to you yet, and you're the only one doing it, um, it it's going to have eventually have an impact on your spouse. Okay, and Dr. Whyte is back, so we want you to share your story.
testing 1, 2, 3. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah,
So
we can hear you. We can.
so so you had this, so you had this woman in this relationship, and Michelle is telling us the story, and basically the woman felt like she had to manage the partner's emotions. So if he got really upset, she'd feel like, hey, calm down, hey, don't worry about it, calm down, hey, you're losing it, don't lose it. And so she noticed that that would only cause him to kind of get more upset.
Mm,
And so suddenly what she realized was, hey, let me do something different. And so he said, hey, you know what? This boss, he wants me to do this report, and it's so unfair. He hasn't given me a lot of time. And so she said, your boss is nuts. How dare him give you this assignment and make it so that it's practically impossible for you to do this in any kind of reasonable time? And the husband was just floored. He's looking at her. He's like, calm down, honey. I really think I got this. And so the idea just being that she changed though. I love to go deeper, like what really happened. um she communicated, I hear you and I'm joining you. And really when we're communicating, that's what we're appealing for. It's for people to really and truly hear us,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to tell us, stifle yourself or be quiet. You guys remember Archie Bunker, stifle yourself, Edith. People don't want you telling them to stifle. That causes people to explode more often, than not.
You
People
don't,
want
you don't
you
want
to
to tell
communicate.
you
What's
don't want
that?
you definitely don't want to tell a woman that, and yeah, and I guess you're right. You don't want to tell a man that
It cuts both ways on that one.
either.
So yeah, so the idea is do something different, but
Hmm.
that requires that you analyze your relationships, notice the patterns that you don't like that, and you say, you know what, let me do something different. Over to you, sis.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree. The trying, something new. That, somebody said in the chat, yeah, both parties must agree on the something new. And I think that's, there's truth in that, as well.
Well,
Um,
not in the context of that story, because
right.
he didn't necessarily agree. She volunteered to do something new. I think
Right.
what you're really saying is both parties need to benefit. Like you don't
Mhm.
want to do something new that
Right.
harms the other
Exactly.
um
No.
party. But yeah, so that's
Yeah.
the deal.
Yes. So that we are all right. We are Right out of time. I'm glad. Thank you for the prayer warriors that were praying and for all of you that were praying over the technical things because we were this program was much clearer than the last one, and I feel like we gave some of the same information, but we shared it in a little bit of different way. And I think for those who saw part one, I think now they should know this pretty well. They should know these 5 steps. They should definitely know these 5 steps and understand these 5 steps. So we encourage you to please share this program because most of you on here from the chat are more than likely married or you're will be married one day or and you can share this with others because you know people who are married and who doesn't need to have 5 tips to improve their marriage. Every marriage needs this. Every marriage needs this. So definitely share it on your social media. So I can't talk social media. Share it with your friends and family so that they can hear some of these benefits and just share that Living Manna Church does this every Monday, does a mental health Monday because we care at the Living Manna Church. We care about your mental health, and so we are committed to bringing this type of programming to you each and every week. And we're just so thankful that you tune in every week, and we just want you to get the message out that we are here. So
Except the weeks that we're not.
yeah, there are sometimes weeks that we're not. And when we're not, it's
Right,
because,
right,
Dr. White or myself has to
right.
travel or
Do something.
do something that can't
Right.
be. But for the majority, we're here.
But that's when they can go back to,
Yes.
some of the older episodes, and you're gonna see that, my goodness, I didn't quite get that point. Oh, I'm so glad I was able to revisit this.
Right.
So
I was just
that's a
gonna
chance to
say,
review.
yeah, for those who are connected, man, I should have the number, but for those of you who are connected, and get the alerts about when we go live, and things that we do at Living Manna Church. We will also, let you guys know that when we're not having a program, and then encourage you to go back and to view the others because we have programs on there. It is. Thank you. That's what a producer is for. Thank you, Amra. If
Oh,
you
that
want
was
to,
me. That was me.
oh, that was you. Well, thank you. That's what a
I
co-host is.
want credit for that.
That's what a co-host is for. So yeah, if you sign up, you text the go into LMOC and text 84576. You will automatically start getting updates about what Living Manna Church is doing, but also what Mental Health Mondays is doing. So when we're not going to be live on the air, we will make sure that we send it out there and then encourage you to go and to watch the many months of previous programs that we have done because there's programs on depression and anxiety, phobias, grief, other stuff on marriage. So you're going to want to go back and watch that if we are not on. And then you can really go peruse those videos and then just see about, maybe think about sharing one of them with a person that, is going through that specific topic that we were talking about.
and
So,
and they and they don't have to worry about Saturdays. It's not like we do anything relevant on Saturdays. Um, no, we have some amazing Sabbath school
yeah,
classes where we sometimes build on these topics, because didn't we actually just have a series
we
on
did.
marriage
We did
during
do,
Sabbath school on
we
on
did.
Saturday?
And there's some
Yeah.
good, yeah, we actually had 2 guests. Well, we had Dr. White was on. Yes, we did the sanctuary. We had you were a guest, excuse me, and the De Leons were a guest. 2 marriage and family therapists that are a husband and wife couple. And so, yeah, definitely check those out because it's a 7-part series. And yeah, definitely check that out on the Living Manna Church YouTube or whatever, or the Power of the Lamb YouTube. If that's what you're watching us on right now, you can go back and check those out for sure. But we are just so thankful
Yeah.
that you tune in every week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And we just pray that you have a good night, a good evening, wherever you are. If you are, we didn't have anybody in Australia, did we? I didn't see that because if we
I
do,
didn't see Australia.
then it's Tuesday, but okay. And for those who
Yeah.
are watching the replay, definitely share, and like. like our page and all that stuff. Yes, and follow us on Instagram too, My Living Manna, and you can share as well from there. So you guys have a good evening, and we will see you next week. God bless you.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye bye.